We have 29 defenders in our office. We have 2 investigators to support 29.6 investigators. State standards on indigent defense recommend that we should have 1 investigator for every 4 lawyers. And this would bring our numbers for 3 investigators to 1 and 1 to 9.5, 1 investigator to 9.5 lawyers. Again, I don't want to be a broken record. I don't expect this position to be fun, but I want my teams to know that we made the ask.
May I? Patrick, any of these
Yes.
new items, should we be successful at the ballot,
That was gonna be my question.
public safety tax, couldn't we fund some of this at least with that new funding?
Well, that's a question for the board. I don't know the eligibility for that funding, or the criteria. You know, these are current needs minus, you know, if that does pass, my understanding is the board will be entertaining requests from the sheriff's office for more FTEs.
For 75% of the
Right.
money, but 25% of the money.
Yeah, so my point there is, if we're putting more patrol officers on the streets, we're gonna get more criminal cases. So if we're looking at investing that 25% in matching what the number of appointments we're getting in, if we're getting more appointments, then I'm gonna need more lawyers,
Okay,
right? So if we're getting 130 felony cases a month right now, if that jumps because there's X amount more officers, and that's not just the, you know, the sheriff's office, that's if Olympia adds 10 officers, Lacey, Tumwater, you know, I think the public needs to always appreciate that the county, you know, ultimately bears the expense when those other things happen in our municipalities. My office and, you know, other law and justice stakeholders are impacted by those expenses. So at least, you know, from my perspective, I would be coming to you just to say, here's the trends. We're up on the number of referrals and appointments we're seeing every month in 2024 because we're seeing maybe more arrests or things like that. So I would be coming with a 25% asset. I need, you know, 3 new public defenders, and here's what they cost, here's the expenses, because we're running out of lawyers and I have to farm more cases out to conflict counsel at expenses. And it's not just the lawyer positions. Again, to the point, I don't want this number to grow even more in terms of disparate ratios, paralegals to lawyers. So we would need more legal assistants, more investigators, more everything if we get more cases.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Because that was gonna be along the same trend that I was going to ask, right? There, and not to count our chickens before they hatch, I've said that several times today. We don't know if this measure is going to pass or not. Understanding that you're wanting to be responsive to the fact that, you know, there might be an increase in caseload, and so you kind of want to hold off until you have some data to kind of back those requests up. But seeing that you're saying, right, and some of these priorities, like, these are things that would really help us keep up at a level right now of service. And so I guess my question would be, right, if the measure is to pass and it would kind of create a balance in your office where one of these priorities would fit into that, which of these priorities would you choose
Next year,
next year?
well, assuming our priority 1 is funded, again, because it's offset by the expenses, so assuming that's supportive because we meet our reduction while still funding our top priority, I'd have to regroup with my management team. I certainly think we need another investigator and another paralegal. We'll need another investigator and paralegal in either scenario because we need one now based on the ratios that are presented, and it's gonna be only compounded if we get more cases in 2024 and beyond, but I'd have to regroup, I mean, and talk to my team. Our team prioritized, you know, the priorities you have here, and the first priority is our most pressing priority, just to get through and meet the needs of the office now. We'd have to look at how we would reshuffle that, given, okay, the pathway to fund it is in response to the passage of the prop.
And I think the board would like to hear that as we go into deliberations, right? Because if it is an avenue that we can And, you know, just the timing, we're gonna be deliberating on that sooner rather than later, so,
Okay,
just
Yeah, we can
encourage you to
certainly-
meet
yeah.
up with your management team and kind of come up with, you know, if this were to pass, right, we would like
Yeah.
this priority to be funded, because it would help address some immediate needs in our office.
Yeah.
Commissioner Menzer, you had a question, sir? Or a comment? No.
I just had a comment that, I mean, since you made the point that your staff is apprehensive, they're watching this presentation, I would just want to say that if that measure passes and if that money was available to us, I absolutely think that your requests are like directly related. I mean, I understand you're saying we might need more lawyers too, but, and more paralegal support and investigator, but I just want them to hear that that will be a top priority for me vis-a-vis that 25% of the revenue that would be coming to support the related impact
Yeah.
to public defense on the increase in the sheriff's budget, et cetera.
Okay,
So,
Yeah,
I mean, you
we'll-
know, so please, so think that through however you
yeah,
want.
we will think that through, so,
But
yeah, and it'll be sort of reprioritizing or taking another look at priorities 2 through 7. Because 1 is the priority that we can fund now through our
Yeah.
own remission. So we'll take a look at that. I'm probably over on time. I want to respect your time. I can get through, I think, the last couple of priorities here, just,
I know Commissioner
quickly.
Edwards had a comment, and
Sure.
then Robin, and then.
I'm
I
happy
will-
to stay longer. I just don't know who's waiting behind me.
I'm gonna make mine real short.
Okay,
Ditto to Mr. Ty.
yeah. Thank you, Commissioner.
Robin.
All right,
So do you want me to go fast?
I just, the last few things you have here are grant funded
Yes.
or
Grant funded or
supported through
TST funded,
TST,
so,
so
yeah,
I don't
the-
think we need to spend a lot
no,
of
we do
time on
not. So,
those.
yeah, thank you, Robin.
I
No.
just wanted to say though, Patrick, that yours is one of the extremely few offices or departments that followed the original instructions to offset any new ads with a corresponding reduction. And we appreciate that so much. Thank you for doing that, and I just
2 to
wanted
0 for
put that out
public
there.
defense.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
I
to my
think there were
team and-
2 or 3.
Does this form
did it.
come from, you?
We just handed that out today and,
I mean, just the format of it? Because I would like
Totally
to, I would
theirs.
like this to be kept as
That's-
a template
that's
for,
ours.
because if we ever need to do anything like this again, this is so clear, so well organized, even the colors and stuff. I mean, whoever did this did an awesome job, and I'd like to use it. Jose, I wanna use your work product across the county whenever we have to do anything like this. It's
Hopefully not.
We can work
very,
something
very
out.
well done.
Not all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know probably over, so thank you for your time.
Just a thought too, in terms of the request for prioritization, should the proposition pass. Bearing in mind that a portion of that is also prosecuting attorney's office, right?
Well, it's dependent on the board's decision on how they
That's
decide to allocate the 25%.
Yes.
And just the receipt of revenues, right, won't be instantaneous if there might be some thought around phasing.
Phasing.
Just given,
Sure.
knowing the delays.
So because the board does need to make decisions, including on this, the public safety tax, by the end of this month, so we can do all the things we have to do. We're gonna make an assumption that the tax is going to pass, and we'll, schedule time during that final week of deliberations this month, for the board to talk about how they want to apportion that money. So we'll stay connected with you to get some information sooner rather than later.
It won't take us long to take a look at 2 through 7. Again, like the latter ones are not really, it's really the other ones, so appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Patrick.
thank you. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a small recess, and we'll be picking up at 2:30. Thank you. Okay, we are back. It is 2:31 PM and we are picking up with pretrial services. Nicole, come back to that.
No, we'll just kick it off over to pretrial services to go through their slides today.
Okay, go ahead, Carrie.
All right, thanks. Good afternoon, Carrie Hennon, Director of Pretrial Services. Thank you. We are a small department, so we receive our fiscal support through the auditor's office, so Lauren Brady. Thanks for being here. Lauren has been super helpful throughout this process. I know this is a really difficult budget year, and so want to start just with thank you for the recognition of a small budget, and therefore I don't have reductions to present. I was not given a reduction target, kind of under the premise that there is not a lot of wiggle room in a pretty small budget. So,
Use the roller ball.
okay. For the record, it printed black on mine, so I see your point, sorry. So again, we are the county's smallest department. We're a total of 11 FTEs, but with that small team, we support some of the most central goals of our criminal legal system. So the presumption of innocence pre-trial, the paramount importance of public safety, and the evidence-based principle that connecting people to treatment and other support services can improve community safety and improve client lives. So we do that through three different kind of books of business: our screening and supervision unit that touches nearly everyone booked into the county jail and serves both district and superior courts; our pretrial services diversion program that currently serves about 130 people; and our resource hub, where we're serving about 135 people a month. So general fund budget, about 2/3 of pretrial services budget comes from the general fund. You'll see expenditures in 2022 around $834,000. Our budget in 2023 is just over $1 million. Our projection is that we'll spend about $937,000. That's what we're projecting now for this year in general fund. And then you'll see the requested amounts for 2024 and 25 are based on a request for additional FTEs, a total of 8.64 FTEs, and I will explain that 0.64 a little bit later when we get into the change requests. But so the requested budget in 24 and 25 being just over $1.2 million. The other funding that pretrial services receives is treatment sales tax. That's so the other roughly 1/3 of our department's budget. In 2022, we spent about $390,000. We will spend a little over $500,000 in 2023. And then the request for 2024, 2025 does reflect an additional request of 2.36 FTEs. Again, we'll talk about that odd number in the change requests, bringing us to a requested budget just over $800,000. The roller ball is tricky. Okay. Opportunities and challenges. There are several. Some of these are opportunities, some are challenges, and several of them I think are kind of two sides of the same coin. So the implementation of the public safety assessment, I think, is very much both an opportunity and a challenge. So the public safety assessment is a validated pretrial risk assessment tool that has been under discussion in the community for several years, and we happen to have just gone into full launch of the PSA at the beginning of this week. I see the PSA as a great opportunity to really align our pretrial system with evidence-based practices. I see it as a challenge in that it does create additional workload burden in scoring the tool and in kind of some of the downstream impacts on our department with respect to pretrial supervision. Next item, more under the challenge category, increasing caseloads and workload. So our caseload has increased and the workload associated with that caseload in terms of kind of the level of monitoring, the types of conditions, the types of violations we need to file. So I have sometimes observed, I think this department has been a little bit of a victim of its own success in terms of having done a really good job educating the court, our partners on the value of pretrial services, what we can add to kind of improved outcomes in the pretrial period. So our partners have heard that message and ask more from our department, and so it is a stretch to do all of that with our staffing and resources. Partnerships and support for innovation, that I'd say is a opportunity. So the pretrial services, we do have our diversion program, the resource hub that really, kind of look across our system and have been able to do some creative things. I think our partners in other parts of the criminal legal system look toward our department for that sort of ongoing innovation. And we are well positioned to do some of that kind of creative new work. Growth in the resource hub, an opportunity and a challenge. So great opportunity, lots of momentum. We are seeing increasing numbers of visitors, great partnerships with providers, great partnerships with referral sources. And it's a challenge serving with a single staff person. So we find ourselves sort of with lots of ideas and tapping the brakes a little bit on launching all of those ideas to make sure that we can really sustain what we're doing. And then finally, challenge of lack of department-wide support, administrative support. We lack a lot with respect to data. So as far as I know, I think we are the only officer department in the county with no administrative support. This does create some limitations. I do have a related change request, so we'll probably dive into that topic a little bit more. Question, I assume you'll stop me if you have questions.
Yeah.
All right.
I get questions so far. About 3/4 of your budget then is current expense? Is that right?
Is general fund?
Mhm.
Is general
About
fund?
2/3.
2/3?
Yeah.
How many of your clients are there because of alcohol or drugs? How many percent would you say are there? Is it 90%?
I mean, that would be a question for the kind of broader
Yeah, I
criminal
know,
legal
but
system and, the jail does do a basic screening. I don't know that data has been hard to get in the past in terms of, so if we're serving, coming from the jail.
Just your layman's
A
guess.
significant portion have underlying
Would
behavioral
it
health
be,
needs.
could it be 90%? Do you know of any anger things maybe that developed into something that were not directly related? That topic?
90%, from the kind of data I've seen on the criminal justice system in the past, 90% sounds high, but I would say half to 2/3. Did you want to add something?
Nope.
No? Many,
So
a significant
What
portion.
mechanism do you use to justify treatment sales tax versus general fund?
So that's at the kind of, based on, I said there's 3 different books of business. Our 2 smaller books of business, FTE wise, are both funded by by treatment sales tax, and those are programs developed with the specific purpose of connecting people with behavioral health needs to services that will hopefully address the underlying behavioral health needs, address the criminal behavior, make us, improve client outcomes, improve public safety. If your question is whether our general fund funded team sees people with behavioral health needs, absolutely yes, all day long. Does that mean the work that they're doing is really focused on that treatment connection, et cetera, that would be required for treatment sales tax? I would probably argue no.
And why would you argue no, I guess?
Because of the RCW underlying treatment sales tax, it really is about that direct connection to treatment. What we are doing is
It's not a direct connection to treatment.
not for our pretrial, our general fund funded work is our screening and supervision. Again, we are frequently going
Is that
to
an
encounter people with
interpretation
behavioral health
of-
needs.
What the guidelines are?
I'd say that the law is pretty clear
I think we
that the
gotta
money
start
must
stretching it.
be spent on treatment. We have stretched a lot in treatment sales tax. And again, we'd be happy to
And,
get
well,
something from
treatment sales tax,
Elizabeth, but
revenue's gonna be down on that as well.
it is gonna be
So-
down, and so you've got some hard choices
just-
to make there.
I'm just looking for,
But I think that the
Protecting the general fund.
assessment and supervision part of this is not, it would not be considered treatment.
I bet you, I would bet there's 90% would not be a stretch to say it's related to mental health, drugs, alcohol. whatever.
Related isn't a strong enough connection
Well,
to be
it's strong
able to
enough for
use
me,
the
and
money.
I'll go box with the auditor, just
Sure,
put it in there. That's where I'm at.
Okay, oh, skip one, okay. So I'll move into policy.
Okay, let me ask you another thing. Might you change your opinion if we say we're gonna cut everything except treatment sales tax? Cause we're in a pickle. I don't know if you've been listening to it, but we're in trouble. This ship is going down. How many are on it when it goes down? I don't know.
So I guess I would defer to the legal interpretation of the treatment sales tax, which, you know, I have some experience with from my previous job, but is probably outside my bailiwick at the moment.
Okay.
All right, so I have 5 policy level requests, starting with my top priority is a reclassification. So this would reclassify one of our pretrial services officer 2 positions to a program manager classification. We have framed this as essentially a budget neutral request, and I can explain kind of the rationale behind that. The reasoning for this, so since 2021, there's been sort of a recognition that the pretrial team does need supervision. That in 2021, a temporary supervisor position was created through a temporary pay increase. That has been in place ever since, as that team has taken on more work, additional functions, and especially with the implementation of the PSA, I think the need for that supervisor or manager role has only become clearer, and really kind of embedded in how we do our work. My understanding from my predecessor and the previous county manager is there was not much disagreement about the business need for the position, and the cost is actually fairly low. Most of the discussion over the past couple of years that prevented this from becoming permanent was really a discussion of HR classification. So I have had a lot of discussion with HR and landed on the program manager classification as an appropriate classification for this new function. I think it is a broad enough classification to kind of encompass the work. So the way in which a couple other things. So one, all of the entire department, with the exception of the director and the Resource Hub program manager, are overtime eligible positions, so all of the pretrial officers. So I have someone in a temporary supervisor role, and kind of as an example, in the past month, as we have been really pushing to launch the public safety assessment, I have authorized a small amount of overtime to do that. Should this position be reclassified, that would not have been needed. This is reclassifying to a overtime exempt position. So should we go through kind of fluctuations in workload in the past, an overtime exempt position allows us to be a little more flexible. So the offset to the incremental increase is by coding more of my time to treatment sales tax. So the stronger supervision and oversight that I have for the pretrial team, the more time I can spend managing our other books of business in treatment sales tax and code my time appropriately to TST. I will say we have been absorbing the cost of the TPI throughout, and the difference between the percent of the TPI and the reclass is really minimal. So I think this is basically a budget neutral request.
So you could absorb these few dollars.
Yes.
Okay.
if the budget isn't cut.
The pretrial was not asked for a budget
We're
reduction,
gonna
but-
have problems everywhere.
Yeah,
You know, we're saying 8%, that isn't even close to enough, I don't believe, but.
I think that they could absorb these few dollars regardless.
When you say
It's
budget
200
neutral,
bucks.
you mean budget neutral to the general fund? Cause there's shifting cost to TST.
Yes, it's, I mean, absorbing it within our general fund and TST allocations. Onward. Our second policy level request, touches both the general fund and treatment sales tax. So as I mentioned, we have no administrative support whatsoever. This request would be for an administrative assistant too. So this goes back to the 0.64 and the 0.36. So currently, 64% of pretrial services is general fund funded and 36% is TST funded. So the request here would be an admin assistant to support the entire department and allocating that staff time consistent with how our overall budget is split between those two fund sources. Again, given that the entire team has pretty significant day-to-day operational duties, is overtime eligible, basically any administrative task is either for the director or directly takes away from writing screening reports, managing caseloads, et cetera. There is no kind of wiggle room, flexible time, et cetera. So whether that is ordering supplies, data entry, representing our department at the many different kind of county meetings, IT meetings, HR meetings, et cetera, public records meetings, we do not have anyone who's able to do that work without directly taking away from caseloads, et cetera. I think, again, I am cognizant of the stretch in the general fund, and I do think we are a outlier across the county in not having really any infrastructure in this way. Again, part of this request is TST funded. I know you haven't heard from TST yet. It's my understanding the TST Advisory Committee did not include funding for this in its recommendation. I'm personally, of course, disappointed by that. I know the TST budget well enough to know that many treatment sales tax funded programs have administrative support positions funded. Our department is serving many more TST clients than some of those programs. So 36% of an admin person funded through TST seemed a reasonable request. Onward,
So
yes.
on our summary sheets, this would be similarly GF.
Treatment sales tax, yeah.
The final thing I would say about this one, I could keep an admin person busy 40 hours a week. I would be happier to have 20 hours a week than 0 hours a week. I would take a half-time position, and I understand that I think, would be cheaper with respect to benefits as well. Okay.
20, halftime comes with benefits, doesn't it?
If they're eligible for benefits, most of the benefits is medical, and that's not a percentage of salary, that's a flat rate, so it doesn't save as much in benefit funding as you would think if it's a half-time
Save
employee.
some.
Some, yes.
Okay, next request is for a pretrial services officer one on the general fund funded side of our work. So we did talk a bit about caseloads, workload. That team is very busy. I know everyone has high caseloads, everyone has intense workload. And this is workload that has been increasing. The public safety assessment is a really important step for our community, and it increases workload. Again, it increases workload to score the tool accurately and consistently on a daily basis. It increases workload in that it sort of directly says to a judicial officer, hey, if this individual is released pre-trial with pretrial services supervision and with this monitoring level, we believe we can support improved pretrial outcomes. So in most communities where the public safety assessment has been implemented, there has been an increase in the number of people ordered to pretrial services supervision. I've watched Superior Court prelims for the past 3 days, at which 100% of people for whom we completed PSAs were ordered pretrial supervision. That is only 3 days worth of information, of course, but that is consistent with what has happened in other communities with the rollout of the public safety assessment. So caseloads are high, and I think I would anticipate increases. Without this position, I think we may be approaching a point where we would have to have some conversations with partners about, can we meet all of those demands? Can we supervise all cases that are ordered to us? So those would be conversations with our partners, but I think we may not be able to sort of continue to absorb all of those expectations. I don't like the,
Yeah, no, we just have to roll.
okay, I'm frozen. Thank you. Okay. Okay, moving into, this is a treatment sales tax funded request. This is my top TST priority. So this would be a second staff position for the resource hub. With my TST hat on, I was present a couple years ago for kind of the conceptualization of the hub, and my predecessor at the time said, oof, it's gonna be hard to launch a program like that with 1 FTE, and I know the response was, well, show us you can get people to come through the door, show us you can build this program, and then you can come back and ask for more. So I do believe we have shown we can build a successful program, we can get people through the door. I also think we've experienced that it is indeed hard to launch a program like this with 1 FTE. So again, we have great partnerships, we have great momentum, we have MOUs with 15 service providers who are providing services on a rotating basis. We have really strong relationships with public defense and our therapeutic courts and other programs across the county who are referring to us. And for one person to be maintaining all of those partnerships and staffing the hub without backup is challenging. We receive requests to expand the hours of the hub, to accommodate additional service providers. I think we could do all of that with an additional position. And this one, again, treatment sales tax funded request. It is when you hear from the TST Advisory Committee recommendation, my understanding is they are recommending funding for this position, and we really appreciate that support. I do think this is something that serves the full criminal legal system, so is of benefit kind of across the system.
We just celebrated serving 1,000.
Celebrated serving 1,000 visitors since opening. Yesterday, we hosted a event with a DSHS mobile van that can do print food stamp cards on site, do public benefits enrollment, a DOH table with immunizations on site. We could do, more of those kinds of events with more staffing. So lots of ideas, vision, demand, referrals, and I think we could grow into all of those things with a little bit more help. And we could allow our program manager to get sick and take a vacation once in a while, which would also be nice. Okay, my final policy level proposal is also a treatment sales tax funded request. This is our pretrial diversion program. We currently have 3 TST funded diversion officers. Our caseload cap across 3 people is about 140 people. We are at about 130 right now, and we are getting kind of more, that has really grown over the past year. We were down around 70 about a year ago, so we're getting more and more referrals, as the rollout of Senate Bill 5536 happens, the Blake fix. Some of those referrals are going to law enforcement assisted diversion, and there are situations where our prosecuting attorney's office has said that pretrial services diversion would be a better option. I do not have local data to substantiate this, but a lot of the national data and research suggests that these type of diversion programs do save other criminal legal system costs, so reduce costs of court processing, incarceration, et cetera. And this one again is a TST request, and my understanding is that the TST Advisory Committee is not recommending this one, as Robin referenced. You will face hard choices with respect to TST as well.
Why do you say they're not recommending? It says up there that they're priority 5. Sorry.
That's Carrie's
that's
priority.
Carrie's
Yes,
priorities
yeah.
for pretrial.
You'll hear
from
separately
TST.
about TST, yes. Those were all my requests.
Thank you, Carrie. I don't either.
I'm afraid there's not gonna be any money unless we get it from other funds, so it's just where I'm at, not that. I think the reality is gonna be setting in here pretty quick.
I think everybody acknowledges that. The theme that I would kind of pull out from Carrie's presentation is not too dissimilar from Patrick's, right? When we talk about the sort of the law and justice in the system as a whole, if there is more activity here, there will be more activity and caseload demand on all of the programs that we have established that support it. And like pretrial, bless you, to really kind of offset some of the costs that we might be experiencing elsewhere in the jail, et cetera, so.
Well, this is a very striking bit of data, just to see the big jump in August.
What do you attribute that jump to in August?
The rollback of booking restrictions at the jail.
It didn't make that big of a difference in the jail population, it seems like.
The sheriff went through the population numbers. He said it went from 240 to 280 and then back down to 260. It didn't really sound like a massive.
Right, I mean, so some of those people were probably released and ordered our supervision, right? I mean, I think in August in particular, I think they booked quite a few people on warrants. So the volume for us was significant in terms of screening all those people as they came through. I can't speak to the jail population, but I'm imagining they didn't stay long in the jail.
Okay, 2:59, thank you so much, Carrie.
All right,
And we
thank
will
you.
be picking up at 3:30.